Cool, here we go. Right. That was a really shit way to start a podcast, wasn't it? Right. Anyhow, right, we'll do it again.
The Wedding Thinners podcast. Listen to our podcast. The buffet's closed. Wear smaller clothes.
All right, ladies and gents, welcome to the Wedding Thinners podcast. We are doing things a little bit differently tonight. We are not in a studio. We would normally be in a studio. I'm in an office. Thank you very much to 440 Music, good friends of mine who are lending me an office space because it's difficult to do this at home in lockdown with two small children making noise. But anyhow, nonetheless, this evening, these guests that I have here are tremendous in their own very special way. I have the very, very talented Sammy Dinneen. Say hey, hello. Sammy. There he is.
Hey guys.
Where are you joining us from this evening, Sammy?
I'm from my wife's office.
Oh,
because
where in the world are you?
London.
London. Okay, he's a London lad. And also joining us this evening, we have the super talented Dan Berry. Where are you, Dan?
Hello. I'm in a shipping container in Manchester. No joke.
You are actually, yeah. It looks
I really
good.
am. Thank you.
Chipboard behind you.
I really feel like it's going to come through. The look of the shipping container on the podcast is really going to shine right through to the audio, isn't it?
Yes. But that's why we're going to verbally describe it. It looks good. I like the way it looks. Yeah.
Chipboard internal walls, nice. Lots of like lovely foam as you get in these kind of studios, to make the sound. The technical phrase is to make the sound good, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah, something like that.
And then a load of cables. You've actually got over here my wife's sewing machine because she has been like a lot of people. I guess we've been doing our own business things in lockdown because there's not a hell of a lot else to do, really, is there?
No, you're completely right. There's absolutely nothing else to do. But this is why the podcast is pretty cool, because it means there's something to do. It's a creative outlet. So, Sammy, just tell us a little bit about what you do. What is it why are you here? What do you do, dude?
Technically, I am a handbalancer, which means I work and perform in the circus and I stand on my hands. So anything you can do on your feet, I try and do on my hands. So standing on one hand, jumping on my hands, contorting my body into different positions. That's literally my life. So I train, perform and teach handstands.
Brilliant. Okay, cool. And Dan, tell us a little bit about what you do.
I'm a freelance musician, and for kind of almost the whole time that I've been working freelance, doing kind of original music and private events, all the kind of full spectrum of things you can do for live performance. I've been running my own kind of record label music promotions business as well. So I'm kind of like a very music obsessive person. I kind of tried to find every different way to engage with it. Because I've been doing that kind of independent music life for probably about 10 years now.
All right, many pies then, by the sounds of it.
I'm a fan of pies.
Well,
that's what they say. You're always spinning pies, Dan. So many spinning pies. How do you keep a track?
Yeah. Well, at the moment there are no pies, basically, right?
Oh.
No pies. I see no pies. All right. Well, look, thank you both ever so much for joining us this evening. I really, really do appreciate you taking the time out of your evenings to come and have a chat. And obviously, the reasons why we're here are all very, very varied and very, very different. But predominantly, the whole podcast thing came with the idea of sort of chatting about the rough and tough stuff, which originally, was the reason why I started the podcast, was because I didn't feel it was done enough. So I'd like to start with you, Sammy, if that's okay. And usually that's where I see the look of horror on people's face. They go, at first. So it's been interesting doing things on Zoom, because normally I just do things and I'm hearing people, so I can't see their reactions. But tell us a little bit more about hand balancing and you as a hand balancer. How on earth did you get into that? Because it sounds incredibly specialist. I don't imagine for any moment it's something that you tripped over one day and went, hey, I'm really good on my hands. So, yeah, tell us a little bit about where that came from.
It's a very long story that I'll try and do quite quickly. I was always a very active child. Like, my mum was one of those parents that was just like, go and play in the garden. We weren't really allowed to watch much TV. If we ever had any excess energy or were annoying her, go in the garden. Doesn't matter if it's raining or if it's sunny or windy or whatever, go and play in the garden, go in the park. So I was always a very active child, and that just with me and my friends just naturally took me into like climbing trees. Like you got to remember, like when I was a kid, me and my brother watched Gladiators. So we'd go to the park and we would do Gladiators on the bars and things like that. And obviously a lot of the Gladiators were ex-gymnasts. So I used to try and do what they used to do. So I used to take my mattress off my bed and then jump off my bed onto the mattress trying to do somersaults.
Even though they told you not to replicate.
Obviously, but that's saying like don't press the red button.
Oh, exactly. Why would you listen to them? Just to intervene very quickly, who was your favourite gladiator and why?
Wolf. I
Yes!
don't really know why, because he was
just awesome.
He was, but he was the bad one.
He was the bad one.
Did you like Saracen?
Saracen was cool as well.
Yes. Wait, wasn't there one?
Do you remember Saracen? Because I was in a local pantomime performance with Saracen. He was a hero.
Was he? Saracen. Was there one called Lightning?
Was it Lightning or Storm or something? She was the female gymnast one who used to do flips all the way down. Jet. There we go. I
know that because of Partridge, so thank you, Partridge.
One of my circus teachers then replaced her in the Gladiator that happened in 2012, 2013.
I mean, the series that wasn't actually that good.
No, exactly.
It wasn't the same.
I never watched it, and I knew.
Of course, nobody did.
But so at around about the age of 12 or 13, my mum then found a breakdancing place in Derby, and I then started going to that to like put my energy into something, and instead of like me jumping off the wall in the back garden and then going, Mum, look what I can do. Oh wait, no, I can do it. Let me try again. And the 100th time still not doing it. So I started going into doing breakdancing, and within that, there was someone there who then formed what we would call it a crew, but we weren't actually that badass or anything like that. It was just a bunch of boys that got together, and we started making breakdancing dance pieces that then we went and did shows in different places.
Oh, cool.
And that's what got me into performing and dance. Then I told my mum I wanted to be on stage, I wanted to perform. So I auditioned for a dance school in Edinburgh. I got into the dance school because of how, I don't want to say how good, or because I had good acrobatic skills, let's say. I could flip myself around.
Because you're superb. Absolutely superb in every way.
That's what I
can say that about you.
We can say that, yeah.
We're allowed to.
Allow us.
And so I got into the circus, I got into the dance school in Edinburgh, but I couldn't count music, which must horror both of you when people can't count music.
I'm a teacher.
But I couldn't understand how you can count music. And my mum's husband now is an organist, and he would try and teach me. And he's like, so can you hear that that's the one? And I'm like, I have no idea what you're on about.
Right.
And he would spend hours with me trying to teach me music. And then we would listen to music and be like, okay, tell me what instruments are in there. And I'd be like, drums. He's like, great, there are 3 others. Drum. I couldn't hear music. I couldn't hear timing. Picking up choreography, pointing my toes, straightening my knees was very difficult for me. But I had all the tricks. That's in nowadays, tricks are much more important in commercial TVs and things like that. So then I'm in Edinburgh. The Edinburgh Fringe is happening. I go see a bunch of shows, and I see 3 circus shows. And afterwards, I then talk to those circus artists. I drink with them. They teach me some circus stuff in the park. And then they tell me that there is a circus school in London. So I auditioned for a dance school in London and a circus school in London, and I quite cockily said, whichever one will take me, I'll go to. Which now I realise how cocky that was, because I was just assuming that they would both take me. But back then it was just more like, I don't really want to make my own decision. The dance school I got on the waiting list, and the circus school I got in. So I was like, there you go. That's it. Set. I'm now doing circus. So I went to the circus school at 18, and you spend the first 2 terms of circus school dabbling, like working on strength, flexibility, but also trying different things to figure out what you want to do. Now, I can narrow it down. I don't like heights. There are a lot of circus disciplines where you're up in the air, so that narrows it down drastically. I mean, literally, we have floor-based acrobats and aerial. I'm not an aerialist. I don't like being in the air. So it pretty much leaves you to juggling, hula hoop, handstands. That's pretty much it. I mean, there are more things nowadays, but back when I was doing it, that was kind of it. So handstands just seemed to be the only one really left for me. So I was like, well,
it was more out of fate than choice then, by the sounds of it.
Completely. It was not my choice. Like, it was just, oh, this kind of works. I did kind of fall into all of this. It was never a purposeful decision.
Right. Okay.
And then that was that. Actually, my teacher, who I was assigned, said he wouldn't teach me. He was like, I wasn't flexible enough. I wasn't strong enough. I didn't have any good.
How did that go down with you? How did that make you feel?
Me and him had a very up and down relationship for many, many years. And I wouldn't be where I am now if it wasn't for him.
That's really
so I think that he very much trained me or taught me in negative reinforcement.
Sure, yeah.
I very rarely. Sorry,
I was going to say the only reason I ask is because I had I won't name names, but I had a piano teacher who told my parents I was unteachable because I learned everything by ear, and I still do now. I'm probably, I mean, my music reading is okay, but nowhere near the level that would put me in a pit band, for example, or anything like that. But I've always learned by ear, and I remember this piano teacher. I remember going to one of his lessons once and saying, "Oh, I've learned this," and I played, and it transpired that it was "Imagine" by John Lennon, and I just remember hearing it on the radio, and I was like, I just started putting the keys down and like finding it, and I played it all, and I didn't really get much in terms of well done or anything, and it was like 2 or 3 lessons after that where he spoke to my folks and said, he's unteachable, and that's because I wasn't doing it as he wanted.
Doesn't that mean more that he's a bad teacher?
Perhaps, and he couldn't differentiate, maybe. But it's very interesting that you said therefore that almost like that comment led to everything else, and it sort of feels the same for me, because if anything, it inspired me more to be like, well, I'm making a sign on the video which we're not going to put up to that guy.
That's what it was like for me as well. Like I kind of wanted to prove him wrong.
Sure.
That, like, I will work my ass off as hard as possible. If you tell me to do something, I will do it. And that's what I did. I never complained or argued in the class. I did exactly what he told me to. I shut up and I got on with it. After the class, after school, I would bitch and complain to my friends, my mom and everything. But in the class, I did what he told me to do, because to me, he was my coach, and he was trying to get it as possible.
Yeah, cool. That's great, man. And you're, I know not right now, but you seem to be an incredibly in-demand hand balancer. You've done some amazing looking things. I had a watch of some of your clips on YouTube, and obviously I can do all the things you do anyway.
Obviously, I just have to show off about it.
Yeah, I mean, you just do it on a stage. But I'm watching it with my wife, and I'm just like, I don't know how he's doing this. This is just this utter witchcraft. But yeah, very, very super talented, and it must have taken you an awful long time. I mean, this is an understatement, but the level of training to get to the point where you do just make, as you said, actually, you make it just look like you are, well, that your hands are your feet, and it's just natural. I mean, it's incredible to watch.
Standing on my hands does feel as natural as my feet now, which sounds so wrong.
It does, but I can see what you mean by saying that, having watched your videos. So
I would bet.
Oh, go on,
I'd be willing to bet that you're more agile on your hands than some people are on their feet, right?
I'm more agile on my hands than I am on my feet.
Wow, no way!
I can stand on one hand better than I can stand on one foot. I love that. I can actually, my arms are actually stronger than my legs, and everyone's like, no, Sammy, that's wrong. Anatomically, your legs are stronger and bigger than your arms. I'm like, yeah, I get anatomically, but after you've spent 11, 12 years standing on your hands, your arms are going to get stronger than your legs. So when I used to go to the gym, when you're allowed to, I could overhead press the same amount that I could squat, which is not correct in the slightest.
That isn't correct, no. But impressive nonetheless. Very, very good. How long can you stand on your hands for?
The longest I have done is 17 minutes. But in the grand scheme of the circus world, that's actually not.
Right.
There are many people that have done an hour.
Wow. Is there a Guinness World Record on that?
No. It's deemed as too unhealthy.
Oh, really? They won't let you do it.
Because I met one of the Guinness World Record people, and I was like, can I do this? They were like, no, we're trying to stop the unhealthy things.
Oh, taking the fun out of the world then. Thanks.
Exactly.
Thumb sponges. All right. Well, they won't be sponsoring us anytime soon then, based on my comment just there. Never mind. Okay. Well, can I come back to the sort of training and the sort of, because I imagine, that there must have been occasions where you're like, I can't do this. This is way too tough. So we're going to come back to that, and I'll be curious to know sort of how you overcame that, the sort of that mental block, whether it was there at all for you. I don't know, but we're going to come back to that.
Weekly.
Is there weekly? Okay, well that's reassuring as well. But yeah, fantastic, really, really fascinating. And if anyone's listening right now and thinking, well, I might go and check this out. I mean, obviously, don't stop the don't stop the podcast, but pause. Go and check out Sammy Dinneen. You're on YouTube, aren't you? So there'll be plenty of things on there.
Yeah.
Go and have a watch, and then come back, and you'll be hearing more from Sammy. But Dan, let's move over to you. So you said you are a very, very talented musician. You play a multitude of instruments. You're a producer. You record. You write. You promote. You've got your own record label. But you were doing all of those things prior to COVID anyway. So tell me a little bit about your starting point, your origins, if you like, of being a musician.
Well, I come from kind of a musical family in my mum and dad's generation of the family anyway. Not so much outside of that, but come from kind of like a musical bubble within my family. Of my dad's a professional jazz musician and is now the head of jazz and improvisation at the Royal Northern. He got bumped up to that post the other year. He's very chuffed with it.
Very cool.
It's it's a bit. I think it's a bit weird for them right now. Teaching lots of Zoom for them as well, same as us. My mum has always played like classical piano. Went to study at Trinity College of Music, and and has always taught piano from our house and played piano. So we did have a TV, but a TV like similar to what you're saying before, Sammy. The TV was not so much the focus of the living room and house. And if you were supposed to be doing something, it was supposed to be like, well, why not go and get all the pots and pans out and rattle some percussion, or why not play on that drum kit that we've got in the basement, why not set that up and do that, or and every Sunday we'd have kind of my dad was part of this initiative, set up like a community jazz orchestra, and we did that every Sunday, and lots of stuff like that for us was just family wise was just a really normal outlet of of what we all did. It's just kind of a nice thing to be surrounded from a young age. And when we're naked children running around the front room like you do when you're a toddler, we were running around to Earth, Wind and Fire.
Nice.
And all of that. So I've had that kind of music, like kind of what I would probably pretentiously like to call good music, going on, because it is. Let's just be honest. There's a lot of bad music out there. So yes, I've been surrounded by it a lot, and a similar experience to you when you then go like some people. Yeah, when you're then trying to learn about it in a structured environment, to both of you resonate with like what both of you said about then, going ahead to try and like learn what you care about, what you love doing. Very strange when like I've not done any classical grades on saxophone or anything, and then going to like a music college environment, I was like, I cannot read this thing that you want me to read. I just cannot do it. and realizing you're the only one in the room who's like that, or and having teachers who like you, the way you think about music doesn't fit into the way to their system that they teach. But like, luckily for me, I also had like my family that I'm like, well, I'm being told that I'm not doing it properly, but I know that these guys, I'm doing it well enough for these situations outside of education. It's working here. So I didn't worry about it too much. But yeah, so it's kind of a family business doing music, and still is, for like, I've got 2 sisters and a brother, and everybody does some kind of music. Everybody's life is doing something, in music as well as other stuff. So yeah, kind of and doing the kind of record label and promotion side was just like, I think I'm quite like I'm quite an ADHD. I probably need to get myself diagnosed for adult ADHD, but I am things that I like really heavily. I want to be engaged with it from every possible angle, and I obsess about it. And And doing promotions was just kind of thing of like, I found it frustrating trying, if you write music or you get a band together, that whole experience of trying to like persuade someone to put your band on for a night in London or wherever, Manchester, whatever you're trying to do. It's quite hard. It's quite like an alien process. You don't feel like you have the contacts or whatever, and it's quite hard to persuade people to give you a chance or whatever. And
I'm the way to start either. That's the other thing.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm the kind of person, if other people just don't want to give me a chance, I'm just like, well, fine, I'll do it on my own. I don't care. I'm just going to do my own thing, and it's going to be better than your thing. Then you're going to want to do my thing. And that's kind of like how I approach everything, is that I'm just like, well, even when there's no evidence that people don't want to help me, I'll just, my gut response is always to try and do stuff myself, even if I make it much harder in the process. But and then you come away, you like, from everything that you're doing, learning loads about the process. I'm quite glad that I've given myself probably a harder route to try and do the things that I want to do in my life, but I've come away with with what is quite like a self-reliant and independent kind of structure of what I do. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like, I
think that struggle as well, it often leads to you kind of feeling more confident in your ability to deal with, as you say, deal with the difficulties within that as well. So it's a bit like, whenever I have a student that says, I want to learn guitar, I always say, well, pick up an acoustic guitar. The neck is thicker. It's harder. So then when you transfer to the electric, boom, it'll be super easy. So yeah, and usually, that was so easy to move to electric, but they've had that initial pain of it all as well. I don't know about you, Dan, but I've learned about myself in since lockdown. Well, lockdown 1 began back in March last year, was it, or 2 years, 3 years ago? Yeah. How long ago it was? But it was my wife that very, very quickly established that I'd gone from being really busy gigging and teaching and being a dad and doing all those things to nothing, and I didn't realize this about myself until this. So actually, there are some things I'm fortunate for lockdown, not many, but some. And one is that I've learned about myself is that I have to be busy. I have to do something, and I have to have a creative outlet. And I've been getting really, like, the last couple of weeks, I've found myself feeling really, really like stressed quite easily. And it kind of hit the nail on the head the other day when I realized I haven't actually picked up a guitar. I haven't played a piano. I haven't done anything musical. I did a session for somebody the other day. I did some singing. That was nice. But that I haven't done. And I mean, even the podcast, we took a break from recording the podcast, and I hadn't even done that. So I had no creative outlet. And I guess for you as well, by the sounds of what you're saying, Dan, we're quite similar in the sense of you kind of have to be doing something.
Oh, yeah.
What kind of happens to you if you're not? Like, I mean, what happened? Let's go back to March. What that first it was 2 weeks in, and my wife basically said, "Look, go and get your piano, have that corner of the room, set that shit up, and play."
Well, I guess luckily, me realizing that I had to always fill my life with things to do was a realization I had like in 2017 or so, when I managed to really run myself in the ground from just taking on way too much stuff.
Right.
And I kind of put on my own music festival, and I was on a national UK tour with a band that I was the musical director for, and I was running
you can name names, can you, or you're not allowed to name names?
Oh yeah, no, I was doing musical director job for an artist called Mr. Jukes, and at the same time was managing a record label release for my label. And an independent musical festival that I was the overall coordinator of. And 24 different promoted gigs at different venues all across London in the year, like a really big, busy calendar. Yeah. And I just love doing stuff, man. I just can't, if it's interesting, I want to do it. Like if somebody comes to me, like a couple of people came together and said, "Hey, we've got the right skill set and to put together a music festival." I didn't for a second think about, well, what's going to be, can I actually do that this year? Have I got the time, headspace? Is it a financially sensible decision? I did not think about that at all.
And, you just said yes, didn't you?
Yeah, man. I was like, of course, I'm going to do a music festival. Let's go. Yeah. And I think that's great mentality. And at some point, like for me, I got to that point in that year when I was like, holy hell, this is totally unsustainable. I think anyone who does like this kind of self-driven, self-employed, run your own business type stuff, I think a lot of people have a similar story where like you really struggle to say no to things, and you just it's the flip side of loving what you do. That people say do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life, but it kind of more works out like do what you love and you'll kind of be working kind of all the time kind of ish. You know,
Definitely.
and it's just this permanent thing in your head, and I think me kind of having a little bit of a like analysis of like, well, how did I kaput myself so badly? How did I get to that point? What was the thought process? Like, what am I trying to prove? You know, what are my drives behind that? And when I'm making these decisions, am I looking out for myself? Am I looking out for my own health? You know, because I really wasn't. You know, I got trench foot when I was running the festival, and I lost a lot of weight. And I was like, you know, you get to these points, and I had a great time as well. But you kind of look at it and you're like, how have I done this to myself? You know, what was this worth it? And I probably would do it all again. Did I just do it better? But it did take me a while to kind of like piece together, like, you know, what's the story there? And I think that gave me a little bit of an advantage in terms of coming into this whole lockdown situation. But I was already in the headspace where I'm like, let's try and mitigate that, or let's try and take those obsessive qualities and put it into something that's more like, it's not bad to be obsessive, it's not bad to feel like you want to work all the time, it's not bad to love what you do, but it's really good to think about, you know, what's your end goal though? Like, what's your end goal? Why are you doing this? Is this like, are you getting enough sleep? All those kind of like little fundamentals. Like, I was already in that frame of mind where I was really trying to check that I was having as healthy a relationship as possible with the thing that I love to do, you know?
And it wasn't damaging you. I think. I mean, like you said, though, and I noticed that Sammy was nodding when you were saying, and I just found I was taking on too much stuff. So, I mean, Sammy, you seem to sort of be nodding away going, yeah, totally do that. I mean, is that a similar sort of thing for you, mate?
I think it's similar for all of us freelance people. Like, obviously we love what we do, so we want to do it. And you also never know what's going to happen next week. You know, it's not like a 9-to-5 job where you have a contract for a year, you know, like, so you know exactly what you're doing for that whole year. You're doing this job, you're working in this area, and this is the amount of money you're going to make at the end of that year. Whether or not it's about money, I think that's always in the back of your head. So if someone offers you a gig and you can do it somehow, doesn't matter if it's healthy for you, if you can fit it in that night, you do it. So like, I've been in the exact same situations. Like, I used to perform, I mean, on an extremely busy night, I could perform up to 9 times in one night. Wow. You know, and was that healthy for me? Not at all. And I only truly realized that during COVID. So during the first pandemic, then in, what was it, October time.
First pandemic? Is there a second one?
The first lockdown.
Dan, it's been going on for 10 years. For anyone listening at this point, it hasn't, just in case you've some sort of podcast coma. It's not that bad.
So the first lockdown, phew.
So when we were allowed to start performing again in October, I performed in October, and I did 6 in one night on, I think, the second day I performed after the whole of the first lockdown. And on the Sunday morning, I woke up and I was like, I feel terrible. And this is what I always used to feel like on a Saturday and a Sunday. And I haven't felt like this since March. So actually, this is from just doing too much at nighttime. And actually, a few years ago, like, you know, I train really hard. I eat really well in my context of what is good and well. So I decided to go to an Olympic sports specialist to have loads of bloods taken and have my gut tested and saliva and all this sort of stuff tested to see what was going on inside of me, to actually see how healthy I actually was.
Wow.
And I did it on a Sunday because it had to be a day that you didn't train, and Sunday's the only day that I don't train. But Friday and Saturday are my busiest teaching and performing days. And the results came back on a Sunday. So my testosterone levels for my age, of my height, blah, 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 all of that should be around about 120. I have no idea what that number actually means, but that's what she said. She said it should be around about 120. And my testosterone was 2. She was like, you have absolutely no testosterone whatsoever. She was like, I sent it back to the lab to get the test redone because I thought that they had messed it up, but it came back exactly the same. You had no testosterone.
What was the impact on that, like, on you?
Well, that's what she asked me. She's like, do you feel like your testosterone is low? And I'm like, I don't even know what that means. Like, what sort of question is that? She's like, well, do you feel like your testosterone is lower than your friends? I'm like, all my friends do what I do. Like, all my friends are in the circus, so we all are fatigued. We all are tired. You know, like, you know, my other friends that aren't in the circus are my musician friends that are performing with me, so they're the same as me. They're tired as well.
Yeah.
So
I wouldn't even know I wouldn't even know how to start measuring my level of, like, not actually getting an accurate number, but how do I feel in terms of my testosterone? I wouldn't know where to begin.
I mean, I could tell you. I just don't know how much you want me to go in depth.
I've got two thumbs on one hand, and one thing that people always ask me is like, well, how does it feel? I'm like, well, I don't know. Like, well, how is that something you know? If you have the thing, you don't know what the other thing feels like. That's the definition of having thing A. Don't have thing B.
I don't even know what my thumb feels like.
Exactly. What kind of question is that?
I don't think I can feel my thumbs. Like? I've never considered this. What's going on?
No,
it's a real
revelation. Okay, sorry. How's your
out,
testosterone now, though? Is it above that? I mean, did you have to do something to bring it up, or was it not a problem? I mean,
what we figured out was, so my cortisone levels, because so at night time, like I would perform until maybe 12:30 at night, or I'd get home around about 12:30 at night. I'm hungry, so I get home, I eat. I still have that adrenaline from performing.
Yeah.
So maybe I'd get into bed at 1:30. I wouldn't fall asleep, like we're talking into a REM deep sleep until maybe 3:34, and then I'm waking up at 8-9 o'clock because I don't sleep very well. So I'm not getting efficient sleep because of my cortisone levels being wrong, because I'm most awake at the time that you should be asleep, because we all perform. So my cortisone levels are all messed up. So what my body did was, oh, okay, it's a Sunday. I'm giving you absolutely no testosterone. So this means you just have to stay on the sofa and do nothing all day for us to recover from the week that we've just had. So it's my body trying to figure out to make me not do something.
Wow.
Isn't that clever? It's so clever. I mean, that's putting it mildly. Again, I mean, and that sounds so dumb to say, oh, it's so clever, isn't it? But it's incredible that your body knows, okay, Sammy, this is a Sunday. It doesn't know it's a Sunday, I hope, because if it does know what day of the week is,
I really feel like my body knows that it's a Sunday, because when I used to perform on Sundays, my body would be like, it's a Sunday, you shouldn't be performing, so I'm going to make sure that you're really bad today.
And I mean, it also explains the fact that prior to all of this, on a Friday, obviously Thursday, Friday, Saturday for all of us, tend to be the days where you're most likely to be working, but predominantly Fridays and Saturdays. And I would always be, if I didn't have a gig on a Friday and I was at home with my wife, she'd start to get really pissed off with me around 7 or 6:30 to 7, because I've gone through a phase of from about 4 to 5:30. I'm at a low and I'm sort of like, I'm a bit sleepy and a bit whatever. 6:30 onwards, I start perking up, and I start to get a bit wired, and I'm just like, it's gig time, And I struggled big time with that at the beginning of lockdown. That's partly why she's like,
do you know what? It's almost like your body knows that it's going to be action time soon. So it goes into like a chill mode. And it's like, I'm going to preserve maximum energy for as long as possible. I'm going to and Kirsty, my wife, would be worried about me getting in the car to go to a gig, because I honestly look like I'm about to fall asleep. Don't worry about it. I just feel like this before I have to be in the zone. And then suddenly out of nowhere, then it's like all this.
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. And like Sammy, like you've just said, the adrenaline after a gig, I get home about 12:30. For me, I think a big issue when I was at my heaviest was the fact that I would eat. Sometimes I'd stop on the way home from gigs and I'd buy food and I'd eat it, and I'd buy 2 of everything because why not? And then I'd get home and I'd do it again, or I'd have the leftover dinners that'd be, and I'd find myself going to bed at 1:30, and truly. So what you're saying, and this is the very definition of why this podcast exists, makes me feel so much better, because I go through exactly the same thing. And knowing the little I know about you, Sammy, and Dan, and to look at you, Sammy, in my eyes, you look like you are tip-top in terms of your fitness, physically, and like I'm not.
Oh, thanks. I noticed you're not mentioning me.
Well, I know you, Dan.
I'll take that as a cuss.
Well, we're gonna talk about that in a minute, aren't we?
Dan, you look like you've been piling through the pizzas.
No, actually, I didn't think you were in a studio. I thought you were just sitting in a pizza box.
True.
Yeah, like I'm sitting looking at what you do, Sammy, and arguably you could sit there thinking, well, Sammy Dinneen is, he's at the peak of his physical fitness. But now I know that when you go home or, you do exactly the same things as me, that's reassuring.
I think it's because there is a huge lack of knowledge, research, understanding into that area. Like, because why would anyone spend the money to do research into how performers should recover at 12:30 at night? There's just no money in it for them to do that research.
Yeah.
Agreed. I also think that we lots of performing arts, one of the other things that doesn't get talked about a lot is psychology. And it's interesting, if you took kind of, say, our level of performance, just to be like, if you took it into a sporting arena, people who are similarly, a lot of teams, like clubs, whatever sport, it's quite normal to have a team psychologist, a sports psychologist as part of your team. You have top tier Premier League clubs, and the team sports psychologist is an important part of the makeup there. But you'd never get it in. I don't know one orchestra or top band of even the highest caliber that nobody thinks to have a psychologist on board. And it's a similar, some of the books that I found the most useful about kind of all of this side of stuff, is actually sports psychology books. They're fantastic because it's the same thing. And he's doing this thing where it's a performance demand. It's something where you need to be like the head game that supports what you're doing, and also the ability to just kind of deliver when you need to. It just has got a lot of analogies with sports. But in sports, it's a really normal thing to talk about the psychology, and in other performing arts, it's not so much, which is weird because we're artists and we talk about our feelings all the time, But
I had we had a gymnast who's heading off to Tokyo a couple of episodes ago, and her name's Danusha Francis. She said into Tokyo 2020. So good luck, Danusha, when you get there. If it goes
2020,
I hope. Oh wait, what are we in now? 2021.
She's a time traveler.
It's still known as Tokyo 2020, which confused me when I was Facebooking it. The other day.
I
see.
But
she was in that podcast. We discussed the fact that, and it's interesting because we had Danusha, we had a guy called Chris Garner he designs hats, but he's also a drag artist, and we were discussing the whole mode thing and kind of switching from your day-to-day mode of yourself, your personality, if you like, whatever you want to call it, and the fact that the second I step on stage, and Dan, you and I have performed together. I don't even, maybe you've not noticed it, but I have to case the joint first of all. I have to see it. But the second I'm on that stage, boom,
like a common criminal.
Yeah. See what you can nick. I've got tons of cutlery at home. Thank you very much. But the very fact is, and again, I did not expect, somebody who is of the level of, going to the Olympics to say exactly the same thing. And she said prior to it, she's just a normal self. She's psyching herself up. Of course, she's, going through the routine. She's thinking about her routines and what she needs to do. But she almost feels completely different, like it's just switched on. And like you mentioned about, there's BAPAM. I don't know if you've ever been to BAPAM, but BAPAM is, I never remember what it's called. I think it's the British Association of Performing Arts Medicine.
All right, nice.
Right.
No.
BAPAM, yes. There you go. Yeah. There's our musicality on full show for everybody. That's what COVID has done to us. You started doing that. I was like, what the hell is he doing?
BAPAM, if you're listening, if you would like to get some audio branding, then just speak to me and Tom.
Yeah. Session musicians available for hire. But yeah, so BAPAM is something that I was put onto by the MU when I had a vocal issue. And they are actually huge in terms of they offer a wide variety of different care things, if you like, for performing arts people. So that would apply to you, Sammy, as well, dude. So if you're not aware of it, BAPAM are there.
Well, when I teach circus, and I teach circus to all levels, but I have a few people from the circus school. So I teach handstands at the circus school for people who want to do it professionally. And when people ask me what that's like, a lot of the time it's I'm teaching psychology. It's more of that than actually teaching them handstands. And now I'm not a psychologist in the slightest. I'm not saying that, but it's more like, as you two know, because you have trained in one specific thing for so long, you will understand how frustrating that thing can be. How one day you can be in the mood and everything's working, and the next day you're hitting all the wrong keys or whatever, and it's just not working, and you lose your temper. And I can just sit there and lose my temper with them, say why you're doing that, but that's not helping them. I actually feel like it's more I'm helping them with the psychology, where to put their head. Like, okay, it's not going well today, so what do we need to do when it's not going well? What do we need to think about, rather than actually like drilling them on their things? So I think, like as Dan was saying, like psychology is such a huge thing. And I've been reading sports psychology books to try and translate it into what I do.
Interesting.
Why is there, like, I mean, especially in circus, there isn't anything about circus.
No.
You know, like, because why would there be? Like, money, everything's about money now, and sports has money. So I've been very lucky that I met with the Chelsea football team, the under 16s team, and I met with their coach and their sports and science coach. And I was chatting with them because they have all the money in the world. And what they do with their kids is phenomenal. Like, they had this one player who never turned left. He would always turn right. So they got, you know, like
Derek Zoolander? Was he called Derek Zoolander?
No. They got a ball machine to fire a ball at him, and it would move in different directions. And he used to have to catch a ball and put a ball in a box behind him. And
no way.
Behind him, and they used to say 7 in the left, 12 in the middle, and then 2 on the right. And they kept doing that to make him turn in the other direction, because they had the money to take that chance.
They take the time out with him as well.
Yeah, whereas
nobody else does.
Performing arts, there isn't the money for that.
No, I mean, I'm a secondary school teacher by day. When I'm not sitting in an office, you know, doing podcasts and playing music and stuff. But like you've just said, you know, I consider that. Yeah, I'm teaching them some skills, but fundamentally, it's breaking those. This sounds really cliche, but it is almost breaking those boundaries and teaching them how to overcome those hurdles. And it's only when I say recently, I've been teaching for 10 plus years now, and it wasn't immediately that I realized that. For me, it was like, well, of course you can do that. Just do it. But it took maybe about a year and a half into it, and I was like, hang on. What these students, and that's because that, you know, for me, if I want to play something on the piano, I'll just sit down and I'll do it. You know, I'll go through that process that I have in order to do that. And you know, very quickly, I realized that actually the students don't have that process. They've not got that path yet. They haven't found it. And it's not that they can follow the same journey. There's that word. It always crops up in some form in this podcast, but they can't follow the same route that I am, because they're going to be different. So, but yeah, confidence is such a huge issue with young people. They are so capable. Every one of my students are so capable. And what stops them 90% of the time is the fact that they think they can't do it. And the case is that, well, you can't yet. That's the one thing I say to my kids now is, look, if you're going to tell me you can't do it, if you're going to say that sentence in my classroom, you've got to add this word at the end. Because actually that opens it up to the possibilities that you will be able to one day. It just might take time.
I think it's partly the artistic sensibility of like not wanting to like big yourself up, or like lots of people are a bit shy about being like, I'm great at this. Also seems to be a very this country British thing of being like, oh no, couldn't possibly, I'm not the best at anything.
And people don't want to fail as well.
And people, exactly. I think there's something in a bit more like in the American kind of it's kind of like interesting how much it's like in America, that kind of attitude they have is like, they don't care if they're basically pretty much incompetent, like the belief comes first, right? And then they'll pick it up. And that's actually like, as much as we love to laugh at our brothers in America for whatever, like there's a lot to be said for just believing in yourself, you know. And it's not something that I think that feels very kind of British, as far as I know, or like other people I know. I think it's quite consistent, this thing of like, oh, where are you from? Oh, I'm from Blackburn. Oh, it's shit, isn't it? Yeah, it's a bit shit, you know. like it's kind of our sense of humor as well. It's just how we think and talk, but we don't like people saying, oh, I'm really good at this thing is a bit of a no for us culturally for whatever reason. And I had this one opportunity to speak to a load of like undergrads at Liverpool Performing Arts, and they're all people kind of in the third year, and I was like, I did a masterclass for them and kind of and had a lot of fun showing them through different stuff I do, different music I've done, and like, you know, what I've been up to with the label and what bands I've recorded with and albums. And I kind of played them like, this is what I've been doing. And also like, but I really put a lot of time into thinking about it. because I was like, I've got an hour and a half, 2 hours where people are just about to step out in the world and do this crazy transition that we've all done into trying to do your own independent life as a creative. And I was like, what would I wish that I was told at that point? What's the thing that I really wish I was told? So I tried to really focus on drilling down to them. I was like, we can't have people like Donald Trump and people like that who have absolutely this unending reservoir of belief in themselves despite any kind of knowledge in the subject. Like whatever the subject is, Donald Trump knows the best about that subject. We can't have a world full of people like that who are so full of confidence in what they're doing, and you guys not allow yourself to feel the same. It's like, I want you all to be more like Trump. And I said it just to kind of be a bit provocative. I was like, come on, you've got to accept that there's something about that belief in yourself which is good, and it's going to help you get through all this stuff. And the other thing I was saying, which I think we haven't really touched on yet, I was like, I don't care how arty any of you are, how brilliant you are at creating and expressing yourself, as all of you are stepping out to start your own business. You may be very good at creating things or doing your thing that is your talent that you've trained for all your life. But if you don't start thinking about this as a business that you're starting, and you manage well, and you think and you plan ahead about, well, what's this leading to? What am I doing 2 years from now, 3 years from now? Then you won't get to do the expressy art stuff for very long.
No.
It just won't happen.
Won't happen.
And it's like that persistence and thinking about what you're doing seriously, believing yourself that you believe you can do it, but believing that you deserve to be a business that survives and looks after yourself for 10, 15 years, believing that that's something that you have a right to do. I was just trying to, because those are the things I think we talked a bit about mental hurdles. Those are the things I think have been consistent mental hurdles. It's why do I think I should do?
Why do I deserve to be like that?
Why do I deserve to do artsy fun stuff? Why do I think that this is something I'm supposed to do? Or why do I think I get to be?
That's where the whole idea of imposter syndrome comes in, doesn't it? Because there's no part
which we all have, yeah.
There's no part of my life where I think actually, maybe not I deserve to be here. With every facet of my life, I sort of think, well, I suck at this a little bit, so why are you talking to me about it? But actually, I think what I have to acknowledge now is that I don't.
Yeah.
I think, but that feels good saying that, and actually I know it's what people want to hear sometimes, and I guess people do, like the very, very first gig I did with you, with a pro band, why would somebody want to book me in and go and do that? But obviously somebody saw something they liked, and it's not my place to say, no, you don't want me, I'm not good enough. If that person has seen me and liked that and liked what I was about and liked how I performed, then I suppose that's my resume, isn't it? That's what they're buying. Yeah. But Dan, at this point, I think you've been mentioning your stuff. I think we should hear a piece of music of yours, if that's cool.
Oh yeah, please, yeah.
And obviously, usually in the Wedding Thinners podcast, we would normally have live music in the studio, but that's obviously really tricky to do online. So Dan has very, very kindly, you've prepared a couple of pieces of music for us. So we're going to have one now. We'll have one just to wrap up the podcast near the end. So what is it we're going to have now, dude?
Well, I think first one to start with is a single called "Heart Is Beating." So it's that's the debut single of this this project I've been kind of working on for a while, called The Third Estate. It's a jazz musicians, UK rappers, MCs, all coming together to do this kind of heart meeting point between jazz disciplines and hip hop stuff, and it's this one has a guest verse from a really big name in kind of the UK hip hop community, Ty, who sadly did pass away last year from COVID. And I was really lucky to be able to work with him and to record this. So it feels like it's been a mixed bag emotionally finishing this. But I'm really proud of it. Really glad that I got a chance to do something with him, and that feels like, because it's the debut release and it's with this absolutely awesome guy who's sadly no longer with us, then that feels like the best starting point to be what I've been working on, really.
Sure. Well, and obviously, I don't know if it will mean much, but our thoughts to all of his family and shit like that.
Yeah, terrible time.
Well, look, let's do him the utmost honor and play that track with Ty on it. So this is The Third Estate. Is it The Third Estate, or can I just say Third Estate?
Yeah, The Third Estate.
I need to put "the" in there, don't I? I mean, Yeah.
I believe Third Estate without the was taken, actually. So,
okay, cool. Well, this is the Third Estate with Heart is Beating.
Find a loophole, jazz it up like RuPaul. Trying to be great, who's trying to see Zeus fall? Thoughts of melancholy, sing hymns like Hill and Gully. Paint a picture full of words, what you sing it for me? And I'm supposed to be here, openly, colloquially rare. Rummage through the debris, damage is severe. You will find gems hidden deep within the air. The globe is your oyster, walk like an elephant. If you're not aware of your work, you're irrelevant. I'm a vibe celebrant, I control the temperature. That's why I walk with the swag of an emperor. I can bring an end to the folly. False rains only need a brolly. Oh gosh, oh golly. My unusual style will confuse you a while, but if you do your homework, you'll be cooler than Miles Davis.
And you know we hit the beat line, and the crowd sounded so sweet like. I see my man be on the keys line, and my man strumming the beat line.
Yeah, listen. In the heart, you the voice to my pain. I just walk in the wind, need to fly to a place and abound. Ran its course, just a flash in my brain. Mine is cold and defeated, the queen's been erased. Tough love, love's tough in the moment. Feel rough feels the emotion. Just pain, no trust, need a potion. House cool to adopt or to broken. In retrospect, peep my dialect. Compose my thoughts, is it lust? That's a different threat. In 4, I preach, never love, that a shooting tech. In 4, my mind pretty blind, yeah, I need to check. Mind on a different wave, thoughts in a silly face. Lies got me feeling rage, disgust with a bitter taste. Picking up my bag as I head out. Sitting on the bus, head in hand, need another row, yeah.
And you know we hit the beat line, and the crowd sounded so sweet like. I see my man be on the keys like, and my man drumming the heat like.
Yeah, okay, listen.
Okay.
Hold it down, yeah.
There it is, ladies and gents. There it is. Heart is Beating by The Third Estate. Thank you very much for prepping that for us, Dan. And as I said, we've got another track of yours coming at the end as well. And thank you for playing the end of the song live so that we could all pretend we'd heard it and clap. But in truth, we're going to punch it in. I like where this is going, and the conversation is really, really flowing quite easily and quite naturally. And I know that because I looked at my watch a minute ago, and we've been going for something like nearly an hour, and it just time was flying. But I'd like to go back to you, Sammy, because nearer the beginning of the podcast, we were talking about your training, we were talking about the process and the journey and the route that you took to get to where you are now. But I would just like to cover the fact that I'm fairly certain, and I really hope that there were some occasions where you were struggling with what you were doing and what you were learning, and I'm sure that there were mental barriers there as well. And what I'd be curious to know is sort of how did you overcome those moments where you might have been trying to learn something that was, or try to master something that was really tricky. Your brain's saying, "Can't do this," and what was it that made you continue? How did you overcome that feeling?
Well, to give you a little insight into handstands, you very much train the same thing every single day. So you train the same thing, and like I'm talking like at the start of lockdown, when I had nothing else to do, I was training handstands between 6 to 8 hours a day.
Wow.
So 6 to 8 hours, 6 days a week. So let's say on the Monday, you've gone really well. You know, make it really simple. You did a 1-minute handstand. And then on Friday, you can't even do 10 seconds. But you feel fine.
Yeah.
You feel strong, you feel fine. You just can't do it. You're falling at 10 seconds. Well, where's the rest? Where's those 50 seconds gone? Like, it's not like, oh, you can't make it by 1 second. It's you are now awful today. And it's like, it's not just you're not flexible or you're not strong. It could be like your central nervous system is just too tired. It's balance. Handstands is more balanced than anything. So if your balance is off on that day, you just can't do anything, and you just keep falling over. You kick up to handstand, you're going to start your sequence, and you've fallen over before it's even started. So handstands in the circus world is known as one of the most frustrating disciplines. Like, I have done other disciplines in the circus world, and I've spent one day and I've learned a trick, and I can leave it 6 years, and 6 years later I can go back and do that trick my first try. Whereas handstands, if I take 6 days off, I've lost a lot of my ability already. A lot of the very minute intrinsic balancing has started to deplete from me. It's not like I've lost dramatic amount of strength or anything like that. It's just that nuance of saving yourself from falling over has started to go, so you're more likely to fall over.
Yeah.
So handstands is extremely frustrating. There are many hand balancers that have broken their fingers or knuckles from punching the floor while in a handstand because they're falling over, or have stamped their feet on the floor or thrown their equipment across the room. Like, many of us have had many temper tantrums.
Oh, goodness.
So all hand balancers go through many stages, like lots and lots throughout a year of them just wanting to give up, just like being so fed up with having to train it.
But how do you overcome that? What is it about you that makes you not give up?
It's part of it's like when you do have those days off, you start feeling guilty because this is what I've been doing for 10, 11 years. Am I really just going to throw it away and waste all that time and energy that I've put into it? Yeah. You know, like, this is something I do enjoy. It is something I love, but I also, you think back, okay, well, I remember 3 months ago when I couldn't do this and then I could do it. Or I remember 2 years ago when you lost, like, it does come back. You just have to put that effort in for it to come back. It will always come back as long as you put the effort in, you know. And I have learned over the years now, if I put my mind to something, I will get it back in 6 weeks. Yeah, you know, whatever.
It's interesting because, like, the reason I asked that question, and you know, predominantly, obviously, the podcast is originally about weight loss and kind of moved into sort of more of the mental health aspects of people's lives generally. You know, I've been going through a really rough patch with my eating, or so I thought. You know, and I've been beating myself up about the fact that, you know, I had a pound gain, you know, and I hadn't lost, and I was really winding myself up, and I still, despite the multitude of people saying, look, you know, you're in a lockdown, you're living, breathing, sleeping, you are in the same space as 3 other human beings 24/7, and it's to be expected, and stop beating yourself up. It was my May Kovakova, who is my physical trainer. She's one of my physical trainers. She's amazing, and she was on one of our very, very first podcasts that we did. And she basically said, "Get over it, dickhead." That was actually it. She said, something like, "Stop being a dickhead," basically, and that's where it comes to. But, you know, despite the fact that I often cannot see my successes when it comes to any of my weight loss and any of that sort of those successes, I can't see.
It's very hard for anyone to see their own personal successes, especially when it comes to weight, because your gauge of your weight is the scales. Yeah. And actually, like, I have a big issue with weighing yourself and actually feeling happy or sad because of what that number said on your scales. Because actually, where did that pound go? Or where was it put on? Was it muscle? Was it fat? Why is it water retention? Did you weigh yourself at nighttime instead of the morning time? Because I know I can fluctuate between 1 to 1.5 kilos.
Yeah. Well, these are all the things that I've learnt along the way. I've been doing this now for like 3 years, and I've nearly. This is the frustrating thing, and I think this might be a big catalyst in the way I was feeling. I've nearly lost 3 stone, and I've always kind of been teetering on that little edge. And I reckon as soon as I drop it and I'm at 3 stone, it will be another amount of effort to get to the next bit. But yeah, I totally get that now, and that's something that I was completely ignorant about, 100% ignorant about, like water retention. What, and I mean, I knew about muscle weighing more, although somebody else, and it wasn't until really getting involved this time with my sort of weight loss and really focusing that actually all those things became way more apparent, that I've put on a lot of muscle, I've gained muscle. I know that I am stronger. I haven't, the back issues that I've had historically, touch wood, because of the training that I've been doing with May and with Elliot, who's also been a guest, has basically not returned, because I'm stronger and my body is able to cope with it. And I'm ignoring the fact that I've been training and lifting weights and doing boxing and all of those things. I'm ignoring that. And the fact that has gained muscles in areas that I never had muscles before. But yeah, I find it really hard to see my successes. But
I bet you're the same with your music as well. I bet you're like, oh, why am I not doing this? Why am I not doing this? And you're forgetting the thing you did the other week that was sick, that was amazing, and that you loved, and it just totally obliterated it from your mind, because
absolutely
you always focus on the L's and not the W's.
Yeah, I mean, it's totally that, and it's like, what am I expecting? Like I need somebody with me. Oh, by the way, that was really good. You did really well there. You're great at this. Don't worry, Tom, you got this. And I was in my Slimming World meeting, and I think I might have said this in my last podcast last week, but it was the lady who runs my Slimming World group called Lorraine. She's amazing, and she's been so good for me. And when we first started, I was like, I don't really want to do this. I don't want to weigh myself. I don't want to know my weight. I don't want to talk. And I was a right little bastard, basically. And she kind of won me around to the idea of doing it, and it has been good. And in this virtual group we're doing, I was moping about, and I was pretty emotional, actually, if I'm honest, on that day. And she said, "Okay, well, Tom, what are your non-scale victories?" And it was a real toys out of the pram moment. It was like, well, I haven't got any at all. I couldn't see any, and I wasn't being a bitch about it, but I was just so, like, my mood was so dark. I couldn't see it. I was like, well, I haven't got any. And she, quick as you like, it was like a virtual face slap. She said, "Okay, so the fact that this month, you and your mate have walked 400 miles for charity." I was like, "Okay, yeah, cool, all right." She said, "The fact that you've added 5 extra notches to your belt." I was like, "Okay, all right, fine, whatever." The fact that this, the fact that this, the fact that this, and like very quickly, like you said, I had that sudden list that was coming to me from him. That's part of the reason why I go there, and then. And it didn't take me out of my mood immediately. I've learned that I'm internally a bit of a sulk when it's not quite going well. I sulk for a couple of days and I can't see.
British.
Yeah, I'm just like, well, it's not working. And even though I'm like, well, I'm looking at the successful thing here.
Suppress the feelings, suppress them deep down, deep down.
So, yeah, I find that absolutely fascinating, man. So yeah, that's where I've been.
But you kind of went back to like psychology there, She had to talk to you in a certain way about a certain thing for you to make you realize that actually you have been successful, because you were upset, you were down in a rut. So you have to go, wait a second, let's actually
These are the good things, Sonny Jim. Yeah. It's odd though. And I question, like, why is that? Because if a student came to me, or, if anybody came to me in a similar fashion, I'd be on that train of, I'd be on that success train going, hey, listen, these are all the amazing things you do. But I don't listen to what I preach quite often. But
none of us do.
No, man. Isn't that mad?
I say that to my students all the time. I'm like, look, I know I'm a hypocrite for saying this because I don't listen to myself, but I can tell you.
You need to do this.
It's always the advice you give to other people the most, which you struggle to impart on yourself, and you're telling other people, externalizing it all the time. You guys really watch out for this little thing, and that generally that'll be the one that you're like, damn, I did it again.
Absolutely. Now, listen, Sammy, you spoke about your training. You started in the circus school in London, and you did some time abroad as well. When I say did some time, you didn't end up in jail abroad. You went and trained abroad. So you went to Kiev, and you did some training there. So what was different about the training you got in Kiev in comparison to London?
I don't know if this is the same in music, actually, but in circus, there are different styles. So in hand balancing, there are different techniques. There is the Russian technique, you could say there's the Chinese technique, and then the rest of us. And the Russians, the Ukrainians are known as being the best hand balancers in the world, or the Russians, Chinese, and Ukrainians. And so all my favorite hand balancers come from Kiev. So I was like, I want to know what the secret is. And I'm sure many of your students have asked you what's the secret to doing something. And so I decided, right, they're all the best. There must be a secret. They must train a certain drill, or they must do something that's different to the rest of us that we don't know. And I'm going to be the one that's going to go and find out. So I went to Kiev, and my mum, when I was a kid, because she was a single mum, 3 children, she didn't have much money. If I wanted to do something, I had to do it for 8 weeks, because I would go and do it, and then I'd come back home and I'd cry because, say I didn't like it, and it was because I just didn't have any friends because it was my first time. So she would make me go for 8 weeks, and then I could make my decision. So as an adult, I've always kept that rule. If I'm going to do something, I'll do it for 8 weeks.
That is cool.
So I went to Kiev and I said, I'm going to do this for 8 weeks. And I arrived in Kiev, and I was 21 now. And I arrived in Kiev and I rang my mum crying, saying, I want to come home. I was like, this place is horrible. It's cold. It's dark. The place I'm staying in is cockroach infested. There's no, the oven doesn't work. There's no microwave. There's no toaster. There's no washing machine. The bath is, like, I can't even fit in it. Like, you know, it was proper Eastern European. And as a spoilt British person, that was a shock to my system.
There's no Costa. Where's the Costa?
There was nothing like that. Like, I was like, I didn't know how. I can cook. Like, I'm very good at cooking, but to not have a microwave confused me. I was like, what? I have to do baked beans in a pan? Wait, there are no baked beans? I'm so confused. So I went to this school, and do you know what the secret was? They work and train harder than me.
Well, there you go.
That was it. They would do 9 till 2 Monday to Friday, and then 9 till 1 on a Saturday of just handstands.
Wow.
That's how much they would train. And their life was much harder than my life. So, and circus in Russia and Ukraine up until about 2000 was one of the highest art forms to do. So there was a lot of money put into circus. So if you were a high-level circus artist, if you were the best hand balancer in Ukraine, then you were essentially like a god for them. It was a massive thing. So there was a hand balancer from Ukraine who had all the gigs around the world, had earned a lot of money, and everyone wanted to be that person.
Wow.
They were striving to be that person, whereas in the UK, you know, if you mess it up, then parents will pay for you to do another degree or something. So they had a different fight.
Who did you train with in Kiev?
So I didn't really train with anyone because I didn't speak Ukrainian. They didn't speak English.
Okay, cool.
So the coach would just kind of shout things randomly at me and slap me. And I mean, it's handstands. There's only so many that you can do wrong. Your chest is out, that's wrong. Your chest is in, that's right. Okay. Your shoulder's pushing, or it's not. It's pretty simple. But being surrounded by people that are amazing makes you much better.
Yeah, it raises your game.
What I thought was very difficult to them was easy. So my opinion or my thoughts of, but I thought that was hard, but everyone here is doing it. 2 weeks later, I'm doing it because everyone else is doing it. Whereas in the UK, no one was doing that.
How did it feel in terms of, did you have that thing that you get where, like, you've gone from this situation in this bubble that you're in the UK where you're one of the people who's really good at this, right? And then you've gone into this environment of like, everyone around you is like better or really really good at this thing. Identity wise, what does that do? Like, is that like a little bit of a attack on like your sense of self, or like, because I think that is a really good experience, but it's not like it sounds like, well, I think those things are quite challenging basically personally.
For me, I do better being surrounded by people that are better than me.
What does it make you feel?
It just makes me work harder because I want to be on their par.
Yeah, so it's like determination, isn't there?
Yeah, I think for me, it just, when I was better than other people in the UK, when I didn't know anyone else, I didn't know where to push myself. Whereas I had 5 other people in the room that I could look up to, being like, I want to do that. I want to do that. So I'm going to work what they do to get to that level. Whereas in the UK, it was just me competing with myself, and I really struggled with that.
Cool. Yeah, man. Well, listen, I've seen the videos of you doing what you do, and it's mind-blowing. And I know I said earlier on, but if you are listening, and once you're finished with the podcast, if after you told all your friends about the podcast, do check out Sammy. And
I've been watching some on YouTube while we've been here. I've been watching just on the corner.
It's good, isn't it?
Yeah, it's wicked.
I mean, it's an understatement, but it's good.
In like the movie of your life, I can really picture the part where you're in Ukraine and you're getting shouted at in a foreign language.
There's got to have been a montage.
There's cockroaches in the flat, and you're like,
there needs to have been that.
How do I cook the beans?
Oh, there's a film there. Let's make it happen. There we go, ladies and gentlemen. What will we call it? The Handbalancer.
It has to be the Handbalancer. It's
or just Balancer.
Day.
Yeah, cool.
The Balancer.
All right. Well, listen, Sammy. If we discover you've made a film about your life, we do know that it originated here.
Hey, Netflix, man. Like the Queen's Gambit. This is the next thing.
Absolutely. Started with a podcast about health and fitness and weight loss. Brilliant. Oh, listen, I'm loving this. Okay, cool. Oh, that's another job for us to do. Something to keep us busy.
Yeah, man.
Why not? So, Dan, you mentioned. I think this was when we were kind of not recording. It was before we started the podcast. You mentioned we were talking about fitness and health and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
And Sammy, I can not to ignore what you do, but I can imagine that the training you do and everything that you do basically kind of keeps you in ship shape, and I would guess you kind of need to do a few more things to sort of really extend your abilities physically as well. But Dan, you mentioned fitness, you mentioned your time, and the impact on COVID is that we've been pretty sedentary, and our movement has been restricted somewhat. But you came up with something. You said something that was like and I wrote it down straight away because it really resonated with something I'd done. So what have you been doing to sort of keep yourself fit, keep yourself active?
Oh right. Well, I hadn't. I've tried on and off, right? To I love swimming, right? I absolutely love swimming, but there's some kind of weird thing for me where I go on holiday. I'm doing a gig abroad. There's a hotel pool. I'll swim every day. Every day. I'm by the sea on holiday. I'll swim every day. I'll jump in the med. I'll be there. You won't get me out. And every time I've gone away, I'm like, do you know what? I'm going to get back. I'm going to swim. I'm going to join the local swimming pool, and I'm going to do it this time. I really am. And I just never do. Just like it's just such a consistent thing of like, I realized when a friend who is a musician, was a friend I was talking to, I was like, well, how do you? What's the secret? To keeping regular exercise. And so the secret for him. He was like, I really enjoy boxing. I just like it. It's something I like doing. So it's not, it's tough. There's tough things there's tough elements to it, but fundamentally it's something that I really enjoy. And he said to me, I don't think you will find some regular exercise that you would do unless you find that kind of, that connection of...
That wasn't me that said that, was it? Because that's exactly what I do with boxing.
Right.
That's what's got me started in the whole thing.
I believe it was our... do you know Pete Martell? I believe it was him. I think it was him.
How strange.
I think because there's anyway, it was just something that resonated with me a little bit that made me think, well, maybe I'm thinking about this wrong, and in terms of how my health was during lockdown, it's like, I'm not going to lie, it wasn't great. I was in the middle of when we were allowed to do stuff in that brief moment. We got a few gigs in. My friends got married as well when you can have about 30 people at your wedding ceremony. And at one point, I can't remember exactly how or why, but I was walking up a hill at one point, and I was like, maybe I have COVID now. I feel like I'm not going to make it to the top of the hill. and I didn't have COVID because I did get COVID later on in the year. And I was like, okay, well, this is what COVID's like. That was just earlier on, you were climbing the hill and you were just in really bad shape. And it was kind of surprising to me, because obviously it's a forced change. I hadn't really realized, because in my head I don't exercise anyway, right? So I hadn't really realized how much of my life is quite active, getting all your instruments together, packing them in the hard case, loading up the car, and driving somewhere, unloading, carrying all these heavy equipment about. It's pretty full on, when you go and do a gig, it's non-stop, and then you're on stage and you're expending energy the whole time. When you're practicing to prepare for it, you're expending energy, and but being on a stage itself and being in that kind of adrenaline filled kind of performance mode, even if it's only an hour and a half, whatever, it's amazing how
it's good exercise.
Yeah, exactly. And weirdly, I've got a drum kit here and I'm not a drummer, and I found strangely recently that drummers are less keen to come down. I don't know what's going on, but there must be some kind of issue. Must be some kind of because technically you are allowed to bring down musicians and work in a studio together.
Yeah, you are. Yeah.
You are allowed to do that, but people are obviously a little bit more generally cautious about meeting up for any reason at the moment. And I was just finding that I was less, sometimes I do have a drummer down to work on stuff, but I won't just get someone down to let's try and write something speculative about, let's just try and have a creative day. I'm slightly less likely to do that because it just kind of feels like an unnecessary mixing of people. So I kind of just thought, you know what, I really like the drums. I've never really played the drums properly. If I play the drums every day, I've looked at the chart. There's a chart that someone's done that compares different instruments and how many calories you burn in a performance, and drums is the top of that chart. And I was like, I'd love to be able to record drums on my own and play better. And it's going to be, for all the things I have at my disposal here, it's going to be the most physical thing I can do. And I know that I'll get enough enjoyment out of it that I can sit myself down for an hour and just kind of repetitively try and get something right and try and get it.
It won't feel like you're exercising either, will it?
No, it doesn't. And it forces me to think about my posture while I'm sat there and how I'm holding myself. And my flat is, I think it's 37 square meters or feet. Basically, it's whatever the legal minimum is of floor space you can build a one bed to. And because we moved to this flat in Manchester city centre thinking, right, we don't need the flat to be big because we're right in the city centre. I'm away gigging all the time, got a baby, but we've got all these cafes and stuff on our doorstep and venues like Manchester city centre. It felt so open. We're like, it's a small flat, but it's a beautiful flat, and we're right in the middle of the northern quarter, so it doesn't really matter that it's not a very spacious flat because we've kind of got this whole
surrounded by it,
great surrounding area that we can use. These parks and all the things on our doorstep, and obviously that's not been it's not been the reality so much. So so to try and figure out, well, what can I do for exercise, knowing what my own personal mental barriers are, but also the fact that I'm not really blessed for a lot of floor space, even to stretch and lie down, but I am a big fan of just working with what you got. Everyone has some kind of restrictions that they have to work around.
Definitely.
Everybody has to find a little way to make it work, and for me, that's doing regular drumming. Is been part of it. I've got to say the most crucial thing for any of this stuff is actually similar to this podcast that you do. At the very start of the lockdown, or like a month in, me and kind of 5 other guys, or guys, kind of just, I guess, accidental that it's all guys, we realized there was a kind of group of people who run their own businesses. Like 2 of us are musicians, but the other guys aren't. But we all do our own business. And we realized that we were talking a lot on the phone and being like, have you thought about applying for this grant? Do you know about this thing? And we're just helping each other with problems, man. And we're just being like, oh my God, have you seen this? We realized that there was a small group of people calling each other for help. And we're trying to formalize that and meet up every Monday or do a Zoom every Monday or whatever's appropriate, and it's just become an accountability group. So if I decide I want to do something like that, I have to message that WhatsApp with a little video of me playing the drums every day. So I get my tick and I get my little dopamine kick of the lads all know that I've done my job. And we help each other with real business problems or health stuff, or just getting up in the morning. If your goal's just, I want to be up before and at my desk before 8, and that's been a big part of making any of these little plans, actually trying to deliver them, is getting a bunch of friends to look out for each other and be like, hey, how are you getting on with that goal?
Yeah, nice.
You want me to give you a call if you're not up by this time? And without that, I think I would have struggled to keep to some of the things I've been forcing myself to do. But I think especially men, talking to each other, helping each other out, and listening to each other, helping each other set and achieve some goals and stuff in this kind of environment, it gives me a bit of structure. In this very unstructured, weird.
I think it's important as well. It's so important to just have that opportunity and to, traditionally, if a guy says something, normally it's laughed off, but actually I think it's important.
Oh yeah, we do that too.
Oh yeah, but that's really important to do that. You've got to have that sense of humour, and the last thing I want is to lose that that really, that I'm not going to say blokey, because let's face it, it's not, it's me. Look, but like, I don't want to lose that humor that I have with my friends, but equally my friends know of my struggles. They know where I'm at mentally, and I know where they're at. You got a real good sense of who's where. And I think, another real good thing to have come from all of this is the fact that I think people do care and are a bit more sincere with care. And it's not just like, you're right. Yeah, I'm all right. You're right. Yeah, good. Yeah, I'm good. But actually, I think people are, how you doing? Like when we spoke the other day, Dan, it was really good to catch up. And what started out as a test bed for seeing whether I could record on Zoom and make this podcast work in this method actually turned into like an hour and a half chat. And at the end, my wife was like, "Who was that?" I was like, "That's Dan." It was just really good to chat, and and to see that, oh, Dan's doing this, and so I think what it needs to happen more. I think guys need to be saying, "Look, mate, I'm struggling, and I don't know what to do. What would you do?" Or and it not be an embarrassment. But I think it's not, it's not just down to me to say it and then it will happen. I think it just needs to happen more readily. And, in part, that's one of the reasons I'm so grateful to both of you and to everybody that's stopped by and had a chat on the podcast, because I really feel it's so important. And I think it's hopefully something in my own small measured way will help one person or two people or three or whatever. That would be cool.
Fully agree.
So please, if you're listening and if you're going through a shit rough patch, have a chat with some friends you trust, because I'm sure they're probably equally struggling a bit in maybe a different way or in a similar way.
There is something unifying about knowing that we're all in the same boat somehow in this way, like.
Well, it's weird to say that I feel better because I know my friend feels like shit, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's weird. It's almost like that. Is it Schadenfreude, where you sort of take pleasure? But it's
I guess so.
Not the pleasure, but it's, I don't know.
Pleasure in other people's pain.
Yeah, but it's the reassurance, I think, more so. Certainly for me, I like I've just said.
You don't feel alone, do you?
No, I mean, and you feel like you can isolating. Do it. Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Well, COVID's been a bitch, and you guys being, again, understatement of the century, but we have all not performed, we've not worked, we've some of us might have really, really struggled. How have you overcome that? I mean, because we're close to sort of wrapping up with the podcast now, and I don't really want to dwell on COVID too much because we all know, we all know what it's about. But what those first few weeks of we're in a lockdown, we didn't really know what that meant. I was saying, we'll be okay by September. We'll be doing those gigs in September, which are now moved to 2022. And, I made that statement in a WhatsApp text that was then screenshot the other day and sent back to me. And like, well, really? What were you at? Like, where was your head at around that time, Sammy?
I think I'm lucky that my mum taught me a lot when I was a kid, that I was like, all right, okay, so we're in lockdown. And I think they did say something like 6 weeks or something at the beginning. And I'm like, right, 6 weeks. Okay, screw it. I'm just going to train as hard as I can for these 6 weeks. This is a perfect amount of time that I have. I can train as hard as I can, and then I can recover well enough because I don't have to do anything. I don't have to perform. I don't have to go out and do anything. I can then literally just lie on the sofa, eat, and recover. So I just treated that 6 weeks as absolute hardcore training. I wanted to get back in the best shape that I've been in, physically, mentally, and I was going to do that. So I was very lucky that I do handstands and I need no equipment except a floor. All of my other circus friends that do aerial that need to be up in the air 20, 30 feet, they can't do that. So I'm extremely lucky that I can. Then at the same time, all of my clients that I taught were like, well, Sammy, can you teach online? And I was like, I don't really know if I can. So let's try it. And if you don't like it and I don't like it, then we just won't. If I like it and you like it, we'll carry it on. And luckily, it took me a good 2 or 3 weeks to figure out how to teach handstands online. But it's worked, and I'm extremely lucky that it has worked for me, because now that means I can teach anyone in the world. Whereas before, teaching a person, I could only teach people who could come to my house. That was it. So that's very limited. Whereas now I have 2 Australian clients, I have 4 Swiss, 2 Italian, 2 American. So now I can teach the whole world. So actually,
that's cool, isn't it?
Positive note of COVID, I've been very lucky that now I have widened my teaching audience, but also at the same time, as I'm sure you both know from performing and stuff like that, like you teach all day, and then you perform at night, you don't really get to spend time with your partner. Whereas now we're stuck in the house 24/7, and we started going for walks every day for an hour because we were allowed to do that 1 hour of exercise. So we were like, well, let's do it. Let's go for a walk.
Yeah.
We found so many parks near our house that we didn't know existed. What? How did we not know that there was a park? Oh, there's that nice little shop there. Oh, there's another nice little shop. I started meeting people on our walk, and I was like, there's all these things that actually, because we both work so hard, that actually I miss. I didn't get home at 10 o'clock at night. We both finished work, and at 6 o'clock, why don't we cook together? And we both love cooking. So why don't we buy a few new cookbooks? Like, why don't we bought a Moroccan cookbook, we bought a Lebanese cookbook, and we just went through page by page each cookbook because we had the time to cook, sit with each other, and enjoy it. So I know, like, for a lot of people, COVID has been horrific, and there is some awful things, but
there are some positives as well.
Also been some good things for it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no, I mean, we have, we're allowed to acknowledge the good stuff as well as the bad stuff, and it's acknowledging the good stuff, which is kind of contradicting the fact that I said I could never, acknowledge my good things. But it's that's keeping us sane through it. I think.
Yeah.
I've definitely said it before in previous podcasts about the fact that I saw, my oldest child. I saw him learn to ride his bike. I saw that moment. I saw the moment that the youngest sort of went, do you know, I don't like this crawling malarkey. I'm just going to get up, and I saw that. And normally, I guess the chances of you seeing those things as a parent that works, 9 to 5 and then comes home and sort of you get that hour before the chaos of bedtime, and you get the 2 days at the weekend, but of course we're gigging, So I've been fortunate to see that. And, it's hard being at home with kids, as Dan will know. And I don't know, Sammy, have you got kids as well? Or?
No, I don't. No. But I got a puppy. If that's anything close.
Yeah, I would say so.
That'll do.
Yeah, definitely. Although the puppy can't shout at you for a snack, or they can bark.
He can bark and bite.
Okay. Well, so can my 2-year-old. So.
Very, very familiar.
What do you want, a medal? Yeah, I mean, I've had incredibly special moments at home as a result of it, but I feel guilty sometimes for that, because I'm like, well, my family, I love being with my family. It's been great, but then, as you say, there are so many hundreds of thousands and millions of others who have unfortunately not had such a good time with it. But Dan, what about for you? We are sort of wrapping it up now, and we're going to have your tune in a moment. But for you, mate, those initial weeks, I know you would have been really busy doing your thing, and I'm sure we'll probably booked in to do a few gigs together.
Man, I went from doing like a full UK tour with venues packed full of like up to 10,000 people for the London shows, 2 nights back to back. So saw like
was that
all
Bombay Bicycle Club?
Bombay Bicycle Club tour around the UK.
Yeah,
packed full of bodies everywhere you go. One of the last things we did was the Six Music Festival, and by that point in early March, everyone was talking about COVID, and I remember being in the pub. There had been a serious chat with management for the band about, and there was whispers of, I think these guys, because I wasn't going to do we weren't going to do the brass section for their European leg of tours. But then their management were having a conversation, very serious one, and it seemed a bit like, oh, right, okay, seems like Europe's in doubt for these guys. And one of the Liz Lawrence, who's also performs with that band and has her own music, she was due to go out to South by Southwest Festival over in the States, and she was like, oh, really hope it's not going to get cancelled. And then there was talks of that being cancelled while we were there, and they were like, I think they're overreacting a bit. And I think I remember in the pub, I remember the conversation being like, I think they're overreacting. I'm not sure. Is it going to hit the festival season? Is it going to hit the festival season? I was like, early March, and they were like, yeah, no, I think people are going to be quite cautious, but I remember saying to my little table in the pub, of being like, I remember saying to them, like, I'm not sure, I feel like, I remember saying, I think it's slightly, I didn't think it'd be anything like this, but in early March, I remember saying, no, I think it might be slightly worse than we're thinking right now. I think it might affect us slightly more than we're realizing. I remember saying that I thought maybe that we were kind of wishfully underplaying it at that point.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how quick things changed then, because like Stereophonics did the gig the next weekend and everyone was like, oh, was it really, they were in the newspapers. It's like, was that wise? People now died because the Stereophonics concert went ahead, and like, that's a week, that whole mentality. And I remember I had someone come up here to the studio to do the last weekend that was possible. Someone from London came up to record some music with me here, and she was terrified. She was really worried about the possibility, and me and the other musician involved were kind of, I think you're overreacting a little bit. Narrator, she wasn't. So it's a massive shock, because it's like those things that you're doing as well, they immediately feel like they're from an alternate fantasy land. Because it just so quickly becomes normalized that, having thousands of people in the same room, it's just not possible. We went very quickly from this complacency of like, oh, wash your hands and sing happy birthday twice, to how serious it got very quickly, I think I like this element of things. I like the recording element, the remote element. I like being home. I like being able to have more time with my son. I like spending whole days with my son. I've never been able to do that before COVID. And I don't think we should be ashamed of saying the good things that we have in our lives. One of my favorite books is this Slaughterhouse 5 by Kurt Vonnegut, and it's like a sci-fi and Second World War book, and it's kind of him processing the trauma of him being in the Second World War, and he saw the firebombing of Dresden, and he kind of processes all of the kind of emotional trauma of that into this great time travel alien sci-fi tale based on a character kind of based on him fighting in the Second World War. It's an awesome story, and the kind of moral of it is this thing of that no matter how incredibly traumatic or difficult things can be, you only get through life by focusing on the positives, by focusing on the things that you have that are good or whatever. And there's this whole phrase throughout the whole book of just so it goes, and I don't know, I found myself thinking about that book quite a lot, and the way, because I can't really put into words how brilliantly he kind of talks about that, in terms of him as an individual having seen all that trauma and all. I guess that all that generation come out of the Second World War. How do they then move past that and move forward and deal with their life and all the good things in their life, despite all the kind of incredibly horrific things. And I just think it's a brilliant book in terms of someone assessing well, that was incredibly difficult and traumatizing, but then in terms of perspective, how do you keep yourself together? How do you put one foot in front of it? Because he kind of comes across this alien race. I'm really going off on this book now. He comes across this alien race where he's like, oh, you're really lucky. Your civilization don't know war and all the terrible things that we do, because they appear to be happy. And they're like, oh, no, we do. We've just matured to the point we realize that we go crazy if we think about all the horrible stuff we've done. And he uses the kind of alien race to be this is an advanced species who can deal with their shit. we humans, we're not quite there yet.
Yeah, sure.
And I think that, it's like we were talking earlier about the guy Ty who passed away, who's on my recording. And I feel like it's an incredibly mixed bag finishing that record. I feel really proud. And I want to be able to feel proud that we did it and we worked together and we're putting out this record with his name on it. But it's horrible as well, Yeah.
It's a constant reminder, isn't it?
You don't get things by just dwelling on how awful it is that we lost this guy prematurely to COVID. And absolutely you should be focusing on loss and all the things that are hard in life. But I think there's no shame in celebrating all that was, good about. Well. Yeah, exactly. I think because otherwise we will go crazy if you think about all the things that all of us individually and collectively have had to go through in the last year or so.
Sure.
It's only fair to ourselves to look at the other side, as well. That's what I think anyway.
Well, thank you. And listen, it's been a fascinating, I don't know how long we've been going, but it's been fascinating chatting to both of you. And I'd like to say once again how much I appreciate your time and, I appreciate your thoughts and just the general chit chat. So thank you both very, very much for joining us. We're going to finish with another one of your songs, Dan. So maybe you could just let us know what you're going to play for us, or what I'm going to play technically next.
Well, darlings. So I did want to do a kind of full live stream performance, and that's become more and more challenging. But luckily, we did manage to do one song. Like and some of the musicians involved in my band are based in London. So what I've done is I've done kind of like a Manchester version of that with some musicians who also kind of work locally in their own containers around here.
Is this recorded specially for the Wedding Thinners?
Yeah, we've got a special live version of one track recorded here through my desk, and I've done the kind of production and things. So it's a kind of little from my shipping container version, and it's just because I couldn't fit the vocalists in or get them up from London. What we decided to do is go for this kind of like nice lo-fi jazzy instrumental version of one of my songs. It's not actually on the EP. It's something else that will be coming out some.
So not only is this exclusively for the Wedding Thinners, it's not available anywhere else. Is that what
it's not available anywhere at all? It's been played live a couple of times, but this is a total.
This is the only existing recording. Is it the Prince Black album? It's going to go down in history as that.
Do you know what? I don't want to be arrogant, but it's probably equally as good as that, at least.
Well, ladies and gents, if you want a copy of this exclusive track, do get in touch, or just download the podcast, basically. Thanks, Dan. Brilliant. I'm going to put that on the Instagram. You can tell your wife that, Sammy, as well, right? We've got a big selling point there as well. Listen, so what's the name of the track, Dan?
It's called Vibes.
Vibes. Is that with a Z at the end, or
it is with a Z?
Is it? Yay! Is it? It's not Vibes though. It's Vibes. V-I-B.
No, it's Vibes with a Z. It's Vibes with a Z. It's very much like how I choose to live my life.
Nice. Okay. Well, I like that. And is it Third Estate again?
Yeah, this is kind of will be a forthcoming Third Estate.
Amazing. Well, listen, this is the Third Estate with a world exclusive. I mean that as well. Live performance of Vibes. Once again, thank you both so much. We've got Sammy Dinneen. Actually, before we do the song, Sammy, how can people find out more about you, your teaching, all that you do? Sorry, should have done that.
It's all right. It's all on my website on sammydinneen.com.
Cool. Check it out. Check out those YouTube videos. We'll be posting a couple of those as well on our Facebook page. And Dan, what about you? If people want to get in touch or want to buy some Third Estate stuff, they got any merch?
I'm an enigma. You will not be able to find me. Don't even try. No, just kidding. There's a Submit Records Bandcamp page, which has the release on. It's on Spotify. It's the Third Estate with a number 3. Cool. And there'll be a new single coming out next Friday that's getting premiered on Jazz FM, and then a full EP coming out in early March. So yes, if you want to find us, there's that name Third Estate on social media as well, Facebook, Instagram. Feel free to check it out.
Amazing. Both of you, thank you so much. We're going to finish the podcast this evening with Vibes by the Third Estate.